Hello and welcome to the Heart of the Dojo podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about traveling to Japan and kind of all the epic adventures and kind of tips and tricks that we've learned and some fun stories along the way. My name is Andrew Blevins, your host today, and let's introduce our co-host. Les on?
I'm Les. Good morning.
And we have Kara Sensei as well.
I'm
Kara
Kara.
and Les Sensei. Welcome today. Good morning. And we got the nice Sakura video behind us to give us some relaxation while we're having some fun talking today. So the first thought today is traveling to Japan. I think all of us has at least traveled 2 to 3 times, and throughout those trips, I think each time you go to Japan, I think it gets easier and easier, and it becomes more and more relaxing and fun. But definitely the first few times, there's a lot of new and interesting things that happen, and I think that's part of the fun and part of the adventure. So part of the things that to think about prior to going so that you have a little bit less stress while you go. That's our first topic today, is about preconceptions, and we'll kind of let it go as we let the topics flow as we go. But why don't we get started? Leson, what were your first thoughts before you went to Japan for the first time?
Well, I tried to study a little bit of the language, and the hiragana and the katakana, and I thought that it would personally traveling to Europe and stuff like that. It's a little bit different in Europe. They mostly speak English, and so I was assuming a little bit that when you go to Japan, that they would speak a little bit of English, but they generally don't speak a lot of English over there. And so from reading the books, preparing for it, to me, again, my preconception was that they would speak a little bit more English. But when I got over there, especially off the plane to customs, there's a few people that speak English, but they just push you to lines. And once you get to the line, the person's there standing there and they're doing this and, asking for your passport and stuff like that in Japanese. So I thought it would be a little bit easier. The first part, getting off the plane, you think, oh, I'm here. It's awesome. And you start looking around and there's, kanji, hiragana, katakana. And it's all in Japanese. Where you go to Europe, it's a little bit different. Most of the stuff is in English. So I think my thought was there would be a little bit more English, but there was not.
So it really dumps you into the full experience, right? That the language and the reading and the writing, and yeah, that's definitely, I would say, from my perspective too, that's a huge thing to think about. Yeah, is to not that everybody can learn Japanese, but I think it is getting better nowadays. There are some, but don't expect
especially if you go to the smaller villages and stuff like that, they don't speak any English.
Yeah.
I think they try to, just like we try to speak Japanese, but as well as I do, you try to learn common phrases, and when you say the common phrases, you're not ready for the phrase
response
back to you in Japanese.
Yes.
And you're like, huh? No, you're supposed to just give me something. It doesn't work that way.
Exactly. Kara, what about you? What about you? Your first kind of thought about preconceptions.
Yeah, I so share that. I prepped I don't think I knew I was going to Japan yet, but I took 2 years of community college Japanese, which was way harder than any other studying I've ever done. And it was community college, like, wow, blew my brain. So I had a whole 2 years under my belt, getting there the first time with these Awa Sensei and Andrew Sensei, and same thing, like, oh my gosh. So my struggle was, okay, I know how to read it. I know how, but because I could read it didn't mean I knew what it meant. I could translate it, but it didn't know what I meant. So it was just overwhelm. It was just complete overwhelm. And I think the best thing that happened to me on that first trip was just like, you know what? I'm not going to read every street sign and every storefront and everything. I'm just going to just go with it and figure that out. And once I let go of having to translate everything in my brain, everything got better. Yeah. But yeah, overwhelm. Yep.
Once you, yeah, and it's both interesting. Both you hit both the language part, and I would say for me as well, and my experiences were I started in college, and I took almost 4 years of Japanese before, and I spoke, and I had Japanese friends, and I had people Japanese living in my house, and that time a lot, I had a lot of input into the ear, and a lot of things, and even for me that first time there was so much in the first time I came to Japan that I really kind of same thing, the brain kind of shuts down a little bit, and I would say off and on, of course, and I was very exhausted, and the first time I stayed in Japan for 3 months, and I stayed in Tokyo by myself. One of my friends picked me up from the airport. They showed me how to use the train station, and then they said, "Have a good time." And over time, people visited and that stuff. But I would say that first was an amazing experience. But also, after 2 or 3 months, I was like, searching the channels for anything on English news or anything I could watch to get some English to just let my body relax and let that translation brain turn off a little bit. But definitely that was a preconception too. I thought it would go a lot smoother, and even less on hit a really fun point of Japanese. You may get really good at asking questions.
Yeah.
Eki wa doko desu ka? Right, where's the train station? And then it'd be like, go down the thing, go through an alley, and there's a cat there, so go watch out for the cat, and then turn left, and you're like, and then eventually they look at you and they're like, you don't understand a word I'm saying. You're like, nope, I don't understand a word you're saying. They're like, okay, come in, and they'll walk you. Half times they'll walk you or they'll help you or whatever. So very helpful. So that's good. So yeah, what about I think about that, but that's kind of language. What about, and again, most of the time the entry portal is Tokyo, right? And that's a monstrosity of a city, amazing, crazy city as well, like lots of things going on there. What was preconceptions, and when you hit Japan, what were some of the things that you were surprised about as well, other than the language? What about you, Les?
I just it was fast paced, right? I mean, if you go to LaGuardia Airport and stuff like that, I mean, here it's fast paced, but in Tokyo it's really fast paced, right? And there's a lot of people moving, and then I noticed everything too was on time. Where here, you can be 4 or 5 minutes late, right? And you can catch a bus. There, no, it's like bing and it's gone, and you're like, oh, especially when you have kind of a schedule and you think you are doing well, and then that train or something else goes away, and then again now you don't know because you're looking at these different colors and you're looking at the the kanji trying to figure out what the next train is and stuff like that. So I just noticed it was really fast paced, and not that people were rude, but they just kind of
Like
serpentine through everybody.
You got 4 seconds to hit your train. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're jumping on and people are pushing into the train. It's like, wait, hold on a minute. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not to get into the deepness, but and the fun thing about the trains too is that you think the train is going to that location, but a lot of times they have the express trains as well, where they might skip 5 stops. And so
yes,
you think
we didn't take an express train once, and you stopped at every station. Every station. Why is this taking an hour? Because you're not on the express train. You're on every stop.
Right. Or vice versa. You actually want to hit the third stop and you go to the wrong place.
And now you're on the express train.
You're like, you're in a different city. And you're like, oh, okay. That was interesting. Yeah. So definitely, there's a lot, and a lot of those express ones and those little things are in kanji and they quick fly. But definitely that's an interesting thing about the trains and the I like the fast pace and you hit a note about um, the on time, and I love that about the trains and all that stuff. Like within seconds, like you can really
Mm-hmm.
either not tell you could tell your time, I guess, but it's really that you can plan your trip to the minute if you're really kind of got your act together and it's kind of fun to say, hey, I'm going to go here, and then I got 5 minutes here, and then the train comes here, and then you can kind of plan your trip, and you can know about what time you get here. I don't really think about that here in America, but you can. I'm sure you could do that to a certain degree, but
Well,
planes are always
just
a
take
little.
the light rail like here, right? It's never on time, right? So
Yeah.
it's like now going to a movie, right? You can be 20 minutes late because they show so many, clips at the beginning of the movie. You don't have to
Right.
get there till 20 minutes. It says it's starting at 3:45. You can get there at 4:05 and still see the main movie, right? So
Right.
there, no.
Yeah. On time.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Kara?
Yeah.
What was your another
Yeah.
kind of preconception of you got off the train or
Yeah.
you went to somewhere and
Yeah. Kind of wrapped into both of those was the people. It's kind of like a sea of human fish. Just they know where they're going. They're going. You're kind of in the middle of the flow. You just kind of go with them, or you don't. But I did notice that people, exactly like you both have said, you ask a question and you hear it, and they're all excited because you just asked a question in Japanese, and then they're like, "Oh," and then you're like, sumimasen, and they're like, and then back down, and they're very friendly and they're super helpful, which is nice because that took some of the fear out of it away. But on the other side of that, you're walking down the street and just again just the overwhelm of what are all these things and why are people in such a hurry and you just go with it. I guess that's the biggest lesson is you just go with it. Yeah. But it is really
yeah.
cute when you ask a question and they're so friendly and they're like, "Oh, you're doing so well with your Japanese. Like, thank you." And now I have no idea what to say. But they're very gracious with that and very helpful. So
That's why in a fun tour, right? Like you usually have somebody in the pod that can hopefully speak some Japanese, and
yes.
that's fun as that pod person. I guess sometimes eventually you're like you're translating all day long for people, and again, it helps you get
Exhausting.
good, but on the other side too, half the time you guys don't know that I'm actually just making it up half the time. Yeah, the lady said that you need to go get me some bread, and then we'll go and we'll.
Right. Right.
No, yeah, definitely.
Oh,
It's a
yeah.
fun thing. Go ahead, Car.
One thing I think I knew, but maybe I didn't know that they drive on the British side of the street. I'm not going to call it the wrong side, but they drive on the other side of the street than Americans do. And I just thought that was so interesting. Like, why? Why is that? I never did really find out why, but that was interesting. So crossing streets as sidewalks, you have to look the other way and all that stuff. So that was a little different at the beginning as well.
Yeah, going upstairs too, right? You don't stay to the
Yes.
right. You have to stay to the
Yes.
left.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise,
Yes.
you get swallowed up, right?
Like,
And they're very good about standing to the right or walking to the left and
yes.
that kind of stuff. And on the escalator, like everybody are very good about that. Versus, here, America, people kind of just block everything, right? Versus very expedited.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think some of my things that really shocked me the most were I had some in my mind, but I forgot it. But I think you know um, um, one of the biggest kind of shocks that I hit, and I remember part of it, but was the communication style. Even if you understood some of the Japanese, and I had especially my first trip, and there's a very and there's reasons for this as you learn Japanese culture, but one of the first things you learn is that the word maybe, and in Japan, in Aikido we always say how many there's only one word to respond in class, right? You say hi, and hi means yes, I understand, no, I disagree. What else does that mean?
I'm trying. I'll do better.
I'm trying to do
I'll
better.
figure it out.
I'm ready
Yes.
to do this. Hi does
Right.
all that, right? So, and there's a fun word and so in Japan where they say maybe, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So in if you know, at least from my experience, you know, in America, people, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to your city. Would you like to get together? And say, yeah, maybe that would be good, right? You're like, oh, okay. Well, I got a plan, right? And I got a plan. So when I went to Japan that first time for a few months, and I called all my friends that we hung out in America and all that stuff, and I was like, I'm gonna be in your city. I'm gonna drive down to your, or I'm gonna take the train down to your city, and we're gonna, yeah, maybe. I'm like, okay. So then I'm like, okay, so in 2 weeks I'm traveling there. So I'd have all this stuff, and then I'd call them from the train station. They're like, oh, well, maybe kind of meant, you know, and you realize that when they mean maybe, they mean no, but let's keep it open for the future, right? And so, that was the one thing I really realized in from the culture was that going to somebody's house is a really big thing in Japan. Like that's a huge, you know, you don't usually, especially, you know, maybe younger ages, they usually find a place to go out to eat and you meet outside. Because when you go to your house, you're expected to bring a gift, you know, and these big, and they want to treat you well, and they want to, so they don't want you to just come show up because they want to make it a really big experience. So a lot of times that when the beginning that was frustrating because you can't plan because you're like, do you want me to come or do you not want me to come? And eventually that first time, especially when you're drained from Japanese and there's so much going on, it's hard to plan. Like definitely, I think I was hard to understand the first time, and then after that, I definitely made it much more clear. Like I'm coming to that place. Would you like me? Yes or no? And then like maybe like. Would you like me to skip? Or and eventually they would work it out. Like, no, I want you to come to the place, but maybe that's a bad time. And then you just learn to communicate what the true intent for. So definitely culture is a huge component of that. And I'm sure you all experience culture in different ways and how people interacted with you. Kara said going through the people and the culture of just getting around, right? That's a fun thing. But as we start interacting with people in Japan, I think that was probably a fun thing. So that was my experiences.
Nice.
Let's go to the next topic here. So I think now that you both have been prepping for the travel, and you know, what is the biggest tips or lessons you learned for prepping? Whether maybe you missed something or that you realize the next time you're going to go, you really thought, you know, if you do these one or two things, you're pretty much set. You know, maybe this time we'll start with you, Kara-san.
All right, I have a good one to share on that, and that is that Japan, generally speaking, is a cash culture. So they don't. More places are taking credit cards, maybe hotels and that kind of thing, but a lot of shops and even some pretty big businesses are cash. So my recommendation, and I speak from a little bit of experience, is that when you get into the airport, go to the exchange counter and exchange as much cash as you can for Japanese currency. Just get it done. Get way more money than you think you're going to need, because as Americans, I think we have that thought that we'll just go to the bank. There's a bank on every corner. We can exchange some money or an ATM. It's no big deal. Well, it's kind of a big deal. So I was with Andrew, actually, a little story here. I had a meltdown because we were maybe a week into our trip in Tokyo and going to Hombu Dojo, and I was running out of cash. And I'm like, oh. And I did. I think everybody probably has one meltdown on their first trip to a foreign country, and that was mine. And he's like, "It's okay. We'll get it tomorrow. It's okay." But you know, and from that, I just really realized that just get your money exchanged as soon as you get there, get it over with, and it will just make your life a lot easier. So that's my suggestion.
Kara didn't mention that, you know, we had 7 people on the trip, and five of the 7 people had to go get cash.
Why
that day,
would
so
Yeah, I know. And I could borrow money, and it was not the end of the world.
I'm joking around. It's a common thing that most people think that they have money. And again, it's not huge deal to do it, but it might take an hour or hour and a half to get the money sometimes, depending on where you're at the bank. And
Exactly.
so a money belt a lot of the times. Then again, how many times did we get robbed less on? Probably 0, right? So super safe. I mean, I'm sure it could happen, but it's good to have a money belt with your passport and things, but get as much as possible. And as Cara said, that was a good lesson. Yeah, and good one to pass it on to people too. What about you, Lesan? What about some tips or things you?
Well, let's see. I think I have maybe 4 tips.
Let's hear them.
One is pack less. You don't need all the stuff that you think you possibly would need.
Yes.
I don't remember about the converters or anything like that for phones. I don't think there was anything you needed to buy for that. I think everything that we use in America worked over there.
The two prong plugs, yeah, I think work pretty well. Yeah. The 3 ones might be a little weird, but yeah.
Definitely what Kara-san just said about the money. But to do that, you need to do a budget. So a lot of people don't budget stuff. So you need to budget your money, what you're going to do, and have that little extra out there. When I went in 2019, the hotels would take the credit cards for your stay, but you had to pay in advance. So it had to be in advance. So you just couldn't come with a credit card when you're checking out to do it, because if you did that, then you had to pay cash. So if you paid in advance, then you were all taken care of. And then a good pair of shoes. So the last people I went with, they have cool looking shoes and stuff like that. But Japan is a lot of temples, a lot of walking, a lot of sights to see. And if you have a bad pair of shoes, then, they may look stylish, but your feet are going to hurt every night and you're going to be miserable. Yeah. So make sure you have a good pair of shoes, preferably walking shoes. And then the next 2 kind of go with each other. Make sure that you, at the station, that you buy your rail pass. And I don't remember the name of it, but is it Suke or Suchi card?
Suica.
Suica.
Yeah.
Suica. Yeah. Make sure you buy that, because I remember the one sensei we were with, oh, you don't need that. Then the other sensei was, no, you need that. Go get that. And then he was just like, ding, 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 ding. We would flash right through everything, right? 100 miles an hour. You know what I'm talking about.
Especially at the, and one thing I think to clarify what Lesan's talking about is that the metro in Tokyo doesn't take the Japan Rail Pass. And the Japan Rail Pass, for people listening, is a really cool pass you can purchase prior to going to Japan, which gives you free travel on the Japanese rail line ones, and Shinkansen as well. And a lot of the bigger lines do that. But Tokyo has like 900 other lines that go on, and that's what the Suica and a lot of those small ones, that card. Yeah, that's a good tip. And I remember you getting that too.
Yep, and make sure that you load it up, because it takes forever to reload them. So I just remember that. But so those are the tips that I would say. I mean, first time I brought a whole bunch of stuff. Second time, not so much packing. I would get my money and I would budget that. And then I would make sure I have a good pair of walking shoes. And then I would definitely, get those passes.
Yeah, and just curiosity's sake on my spot, like what was some of the things that you brought that you say you don't think you needed, and that you remember, like, and I had this thing and I carried this 20-pound bag, and those are the things that you would recommend people don't bring, or did you remember any of those specifically?
Well, some of it was like, I think I brought, 2 or 3 pairs of shoes. You don't need that. You need, probably, depending on what you're doing, you need a pair of dress shoes, and you need just the good walking shoes. Then you just need a pair of slacks, and then whatever else you're going to wear. But I don't wear jeans a lot per se, right? So mostly shorts, and then make sure that you, I brought like 3 or 4 sweatshirts I mean, you don't need that. You need one sweatshirt and a rain jacket.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you bring a rain jacket because it rains a lot over there.
And an umbrella. Although you can buy umbrellas there, but yes, you'll need an umbrella.
Especially in summer. Yes.
In summer, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a good point. Of it rains a lot sometimes.
So I went in July and it seemed like it rained every day, but it's very humid over there too. So it's kind of the first trip I went, it didn't seem like it was that warm, but the second trip when I went, it was really warm, and I noticed that like 100% cotton shirts don't work well over there.
Yeah, like
at all. I mean, you sweat right through them. So the 50-50 are much better for a trip over there if you're going in the summertime and stuff like that.
Yeah, those are all. Did you have any extra tips that you thought of, Kara, on the?
I have one more, and you might hit on this, but that that very wise thing of if you see something that you love that you're like, oh, or even if you just are really intrigued by it, just do yourself a favor and get it right then, because I think things shift shape over there. So if you try to find that store down this little alley past the temple, you're never going to find it again. And B, you might not have time to get back there, even if you know exactly where it is. So just if you see something you love, just go ahead and get it right then.
Yeah, and I have a fun story about that. Me and Johnson were going to Tokyo, and we went to I think we all went there as well, Asakusa, which is the big giant temple. And I think we ate soba over there. What's that? Yeah, the big market and down the middle, and then they have the temple at the end, and they have like 900 shops around there. And we went to the back area, and Johnson found these beautiful Zori nice sandals that he was going to buy, and we were going to go there the next day with another part of the group or something. And I was like, you should buy it. He was like, well, maybe, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll see. And then we went back to the thing, and we went back, and he was like, I really, really, really want those things. So we worked hard, and we rearranged the trip, and we did this, and we went there. And I'm pretty good in Japan. I know the little places and the thing. I swear that, like Kara said, like the place, the whole shop shifts like 4 sections. It's kind of like some like thing, and we couldn't find that place. And I'm like, I swear it was right here, and we couldn't find it. And like you said, we run out of time and all that. So if you find something you like and you have the money, and it's a good time to buy it. So and also be prepared. So carry a backpack that if you are going to a place that you might shop, you don't want to be carrying these little bags around all day long, because we usually have cool places to go and things to see, and we're walking a lot, so that'll be fun. We can talk about that here in a little bit, but
and just remember that everything's not 300 meters either.
Yeah, we got a story about that one later in a little bit here. So biggest tips, the biggest tips and lessons. I would also say traveling to Japan. My tips would be, Leson said, have a budget, but also have kind of a plan of where you're going every day, where you're going to be staying. Now more and more there's travel agencies that can book your hotels, and you can find some really nice hotels that are reasonable. And a lot of them also include breakfast, and again, that's a big budgetary release. In the morning you have a really nice big breakfast with miso soup and some protein or fish or some rice, and you have a nice kind of fuel for the rest of the day, as well as I think when we went, we found some really nice places in Ginza, right, Leson and Karasan?
Yes.
$60 a day in the middle of Tokyo, in the most expensive part of Tokyo, in a really nice part of Tokyo, that had breakfast, and it was a beautiful place. So it can be done. And then also traveling, if you are going to travel outside of Tokyo or outside of these, depending on where you go, you can buy rail passes, and the rail passes pay for the Shinkansen as well. So a lot of the bigger trains, like even from the train from and I don't know, Leson, if you had some thoughts when you went to by yourself from the airport to wherever, but that getting from the airport to Tokyo is not, there's some effort there, and it's probably an hour away depending on the speed of a train you take. And then that's actually probably, at the time, $40-$50, and then a lot of the big trains in Tokyo, you can use that rail pass, as well as the bullet trains, which are probably from 80 to 100 plus dollars each way. So, if you buy a rail pass for $200 for $200 or $300 for a few weeks, definitely that can save you some money. And one thing I learned is that they break it up into Northern Japan rail pass and Southern Japan. They call it East and West, but I think just kind of plan out where you're going. And the trip from Tokyo, from Narita Airport to wherever you're going, plan that out, especially when you're tired and jet lagged and stuff. Less on, I think we were talking a little bit before then, your second trip, that was a little bit of a mystery, right? There was a lot going on there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good tip. I mean, I did have everything planned out, right, in my brain and written down. But again, it's different when nobody speaks English, and then you have to pick up different colors and stuff like that. And that is helpful with the rail system and stuff like that, the colors, because you can get around. But yeah, trying to get from Tokyo down to Yokosuka is a little bit further than I'd ever been, and there's a couple things that intersect, and you're like, right? It didn't correlate with what I'd planned. So yeah, you have to be flexible. But if you don't plan and you're in the middle of that, it's much more difficult. So you have to pre-plan all that.
Yeah. And I really enjoyed the planning part, especially after the third or fourth time I went to Japan, and that part I really enjoyed. And I think less on you enjoyed it. Kari, you do too, I think. But I think I used to, when I went for the summer, I would buy these. They're almost like those comic books that are real big and thick in Japan, but it's like cheap paper, and they would print the whole Japan schedule for the next month, and it would just be kanji and times for the month. And you're like, oh my god, and so you'd plan out by minute, like when you're going to find these trains and stuff, and it was a fun learning experience. But also, as Lesan mentioned, you think that you know where you're going, and then you get there by the second and everything's on time, but then you realize that it's a different types of trains, and they might have a similar train that is right next to it that has a different express or not. So it's a really fun experience, and I think that you have to go to learn that. And Kara mentioned it, and Lesan mentioned it. You got to kind of breathe, and you'll get through it. Life will go through, and definitely you'll survive. But their taxis are good too as well. If you ever get stuck and it's semi close, just get a taxi and give them the card. Oh, that's another tip. If you go to a hotel, grab the business cards of the hotel.
Business card. Yep.
And then if you ever get lost, you just give that to the taxi driver, and they'll take you back to the hotel. So.
I did notice too, when you're in customs or you're at the airport, if you write the Japanese down, right, in Romanji or whatever, they'll write it back to you. Instead of if you're asking in Japanese and they're telling you back in Japanese, it's easier to look at the piece of paper and then try to decipher what they're saying.
Yes.
Right. And so that was a kind of interesting tip too. Somebody else had told me that. They said, well, yeah, you can't understand them when they're talking. So, jokingly, of course.
Right.
And the same thing, you ask them something, they tell you something, you're like, huh? Right. You try to ask them to do it slower, but they just look at you like, huh? That is slow. Right. And then if you just write it down, they write it back to you. So that was kind of fun to try to interpret that.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. And I would say for English as well, that they take English in school, but they usually don't have somebody to communicate with. They don't have conversation people in English. So they're much better at writing and reading than, I would say, speaking, especially in those more rural villages and things like that. So
well, in Yokosuka too, the shop owners were more I wouldn't say fluent in English, but they spoke a little bit more English because they're right next to the naval base.
Mm.
Right. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. A
Yeah,
lot more experience there, right?
especially is it Debuta or Debota? It's kind of like the Honcho. It's a place where all the military people go and stuff like that. And so they spoke a lot of English.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
a lot of influence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. I've never been there. That's interesting. So, kind of from here, we also have some pictures. We can probably do that right after, but maybe sharing what's not to be missed. What if you went back and you say, or you had some friends that were going to Japan, and you say,
Mhm.
maybe here's 3 places or a few places that I think definitely I would not skip or find a way to make it there. And we'll start with you, Leson. What do you think?
Well, I did like all the castles and stuff like that. That was pretty impressive, especially you think nowadays like, oh, that'd be easy to build. It's like, well, they didn't build them last month, right? They built them centuries ago, and it's kind of like, so any of those, castles or temples are pretty cool. I mean, the normal, the Tokyo Tower, that's pretty cool. Just make sure you go with somebody that's not afraid of heights, so you can actually go up on it. That would help. Um, and then there's one. I like the in Kyoto. Um, it's where not a temple, but it's where the capital used to be. So there's that museum there and stuff like that. And unfortunately, when we went there, we were only there for 3 days, and we were there Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and they're closed Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So you can only look at it from the outside, but that's pretty interesting that Kyoto used to be the capital, right? And that they have a lot of different buildings around there and stuff like that. So I really like that. And the one I never got to was that bamboo forest. So I would definitely want to go see that again or see it.
Oh,
personally.
right, yeah. There's one in Tokyo too, I think, or nearby. That's a good thought there. Any other places, Leson, that you remember that you would say don't miss this? Kyoto's a good thought. And I think you mentioned, especially there's one in Tokyo as well, but those kind of historical museums, those are pretty cool because there's a lot of history there and a lot of things they share. And, you can spend hours in some of those places. So
I will say it's kind of, I don't know. In Shinjuku, there's the robot show. I would never have gone to that, but my son took us to that, Patrick, and it was like, that was kind of the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It was kind of neat. And Shinjuku is, obviously pretty cool anyway, with all the lights and stuff like that. So, I mean, I there's lots of things that I'd want to see again, but the things that do stand out are the temples, and then if you're down in Yokosuka, the Honcho, that's kind of cool too, because that's been there forever. That's been there since World War One.
This is one of my pictures since you mentioned it, Leson.
Oh, there you go.
There's
Yeah.
the Shibuya.
Shibuya.
Shibuya, Shinjuku's close. And on the right, there I met these 3 gangsters in the middle here.
There you go.
I don't know who they were. Well, I guess that's Kara left and Johnson at there, and then up at the top there on the building there's me and Johnson at we all went to Ryogoku, which was the sumo place. But yeah, downtown Shibuya is crazy, right? There's a lot of people and a lot of stuff going on. What are you gonna say, Leson?
What's funny about that is, I mean, that looks like they're there forever. These people walking. It's like, no, they're only there like for 2 minutes, and you better get off the street.
Yeah, right.
Because you'll get run over.
And this is, I think there's, I don't know, like seven streets that feed into this. Maybe one of the streets is a human street, but wow, it's crazy. There's a lot of people there. Yeah. So, Kara, what's your favorite places you would miss?
I would agree with Leson that the temples and the nature, and also for me the gardens, the koans, and they're just amazing. And they're tucked in these little places even in Tokyo and Kyoto, and you can just walk in them and wander around. They're amazing. Japanese gardens, amazing. So anytime I would see one of those, I'd take a beeline and walk through it. Another thing is onsen, the hot baths. And I had interesting experiences because the groups I travel with, there was never another woman with me. So I was on my own in the women's side of the onsen, which was fine. It was a little intimidating the first couple times. Like, I don't know really what I'm doing and how do the lockers work and all that stuff. But I was briefed on, bathing before and all that stuff. So I knew the etiquette enough to get through it. But those are just bliss. I'm going to say bliss because you just go and you sit in hot water and then you move to another pool and you sit there and it's like, and all the people, and actually people don't talk much in onsen. It's pretty peaceful and quiet. But those who did, I couldn't understand what they were saying anyway. So I'm just in this little bubble of joy, of hot water joy. So don't miss an onsen. Don't be afraid to go to those. Just know that they're gender divided. So you're just going to be with
the wrong
women.
side.
Yeah, don't be careful of going on the wrong side. And just
I have a fun story of that one, but I didn't do anything bad. But I went with in Osaka, there's a place called Spa World, and I think we all went there once. And
did.
Depending on the month or the day, they switch the levels of the women and the men depending on the days of the week or the days of the month or whatever. And the cool thing was that, then you go from your locker room up to whatever locker they program in and stuff. But then it said, and one of my favorite things in Japan is reading the signs in English because they're great. And there was a sign here and it said, this is woman's side, men no put it in here. And I'm like, I think that's an interesting translation. So it was interesting. Sometimes reading the signs are kind of fun. But yes, lots of different spas in Japan, and they're different. As a culture, I think it's much more relaxing, much more fun than I think you would think of it as like in America. And I think that's interesting.
Yes. And if you get to Tokyo, go to Spa La Croix. Go to Spa La Croix. Just saying that.
Yeah. That's near Tokyo Stadium, I think. There's like a Ferris wheel and all that kind of stuff there as well. So
I could do without the spas. I don't know.
Yeah.
What else? Yeah. What else would you do without? Lesson. There's one thing I know that you're not a Japanese food.
Well, I will say that on that, really seriously, that it takes about a week if you don't eat a lot of fish or rice or these other dishes. That it takes about a week for your stomach to get used to the food over there. Yeah, and things that you think are going to be the same, like Mr. Donut, right? You go, yeah, let's go see Mr. Donut, and you go in there, it's like, huh? It's all these weird tasting donuts. It's just like, man, just give me a glazed donut somewhere, right? And the second trip, I found a glazed donut, and it was in a little ring, and it was awesome. But yeah, you're talking to that other nasty stuff, right?
Mochi.
Lassan's favorite food, mochi.
Yes,
no, I just, people say, oh, Kara-san, oh, you're really going to enjoy it. And I ate, I go, not so much.
Kind of like rubber, but yeah. Tastes
it does nothing for me. It's kind of like eating peas, right?
Yeah.
Peas don't, by itself, peas have no flavor, right? So that stuff was just, I didn't care for it. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I have a few If I again would, I've been many times to Japan, and if I go back again, I think you tend to want to try something that new, and you tend to want to go places that you've already been that you really enjoy. And I would say that for me, a few places you need to go. I would say one of the big cities, either Tokyo or Osaka, and really just go into the city and try like Shibuya, try some of the stops. The main line, the Yamanote line, has so many different stops that are amazing. Shibuya, Shinjuku, Harajuku. We went to Akihabara, which is an electric town. There's lots of just go into the city and walk around. And I used to just go, if you have a lot of time there, just go to a stop and try to get lost. And then maybe ask your way back or find your way back. It's a lot of fun. But cities are not to be missed. But ultimately, if I went and I had a short time, I don't know if I would stay too long in the city, because I really think some of the outside towns are so much more relaxing. There's a lot more things to see. It's maybe not, but maybe it's not as fast paced and a lot of things to do at night, just like a big city in America. But I would say Kyoto, Nara, that area is beautiful. There's lots of gardens, and it's a somewhat of a city as well. But then really, if you ever have the chance to ever go travel into the countryside a little bit, and the countryside could be, there's lots of near places to Kyoto. One of places we all went was a place called Takayama. We have some cool pictures we'll show in a few minutes, but Takayama, and then also we went to Hokkaido, which is the northern island during summer, and so it's quieter. The people are much don't speak as much English, so you might need to have some form a way to translate. But definitely, it's a different view of. I think it teaches a lot about culture and things. And then, like I said, the food and the fun little things to do. There's a lot of funs, and that could be a whole show on all the thousands of things we can do. So I thought I asked all of us to get some pictures together, and maybe we can we'll go through it. Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
All right.
What the heck?
So maybe you can just tell me which one you're
Yeah.
talking about, and I'll pull it up so we can pull it up. Any of these?
Sure. Well, the top one with all of us, that's at a sumo stable it was like Tokyo, somewhere in Tokyo.
A sumo restaurant. Yeah.
A little restaurant, Chanko Nabe. We had this amazing sumo dinner with just all these courses of meats, and we just decimated it. It was amazing. But to be in that history of a sumo stable and know that, I don't know if they still train there. I don't know that they do, but just that culture was amazing. I would love to see a sumo match someday. So that was a lot of fun. Try to get there if you can. And then, just pick anyone, Andrew. It's all good. It's
Food,
all good.
maybe another one.
There's a kumijo.
Yeah, this was what, Sansai ramen. So mountain vegetables and super fresh. And I think they pick them in the morning. Like I've heard lore that they go out at, in the dark and pick the vegetables on the mountain and bring them in and cook them up. Just amazing food. And it's also visually beautiful as well as tasty beautiful.
Yeah, when I went to a place called Higashi Naruse in Japan, and the grandma would go out every morning and pick sansai vegetables for the morning breakfast. So it is a true thing. I don't know about this place, but
nice. Nice.
You want
this one? There were so many. Again, the friendliness of people. There were many. Maybe it's because I'm about their size.
Yeah.
And they're, much younger than me. But so many kids were like, "Could we take your picture with you?" Like, of course. And it was just a beautiful thing because I made, 6 new friends in 5 minutes. And then we went on with our lives. But it was just a beautiful moment in time. Love those.
anything else?
And then, the top one is Hida Village with the thatch roofs, and it's an old historic village. And I think they brought these buildings in from different parts of Japan and reconstructed this village. And that we have a story about that. But that is a beautiful, amazing place to really see how Japanese structures were made and how the culture developed. And then there's Osaka Castle and the Water Temple. Those are just both amazing. And then
Kyoto, water temples in Kyoto.
Yeah, amazing. And then the top one with me with that red shirt, it's both times I've gone, we practiced Aikido. And this was a shirt given to me by my friend Katie. And it says, the place where you practice, pretty much from O-sensei, like the whole world is your dojo. So wherever you are is the place to practice. And I believe this was in Hida Village where I was wearing that shirt. So yeah. And I think that goes with life. Like wherever you are, practice, whatever it is you're doing. And then this was in Ginza, right? Or
I'm not sure the exact place, but this is our Budokan shirts.
yes.
Budokan.
Yes. So just, and, traveling with people that you care for and respect and admire and trust, that is a beautiful thing. So thank you,
especially when you're all wearing shirts, the same shirt. So that's cool.
Yeah. I still have my shirt.
Yeah.
And and this was Iwama. So a statue of O-sensei, the founder of Aikido, and our dojo, visiting that was a super special experience. Yeah,
that was fun. When we got a few of those pictures, but then, that's really good. Kara, anything else?
Just the one that's kind of under everybody. We were talking about Takayama,
bottom right,
and at the very bottom.
Oh, this one,
yeah, that's the view from our hotel in Takayama. It's just this beautiful mountain town. I would love to go back there and hike and explore and just be there. Like you said, that's a neat place.
That was a ryokan, which actually had its own onsen, its own hot bath.
Did.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. Thanks for sharing. That was fun. Go to lessons.
Well, I'm not going to be as descriptive, but yeah, if we just go to the top one, right? So what's interesting, this isn't it, but this is kind of like, it shows you the train line or whatever. But one thing I think, when we flew over there the first time, what kind of drove me crazy was where we were sitting. It said that we took off from, Los Angeles or whatever. And then it showed you the little time travel all the way over to Japan. And I swear that thing never moved. And then it was 12 hours and it went boop like that. And it was like, what? We're here. Because it would never move and stuff like that. I just thought that was a cool looking. It showed all the stops and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example of a one line and all the routes, and then I think the ones in gray are probably skipping ones. But yeah.
The top right one, that's us at Hambu Dojo. So
yep, we all got to train. Yeah, we all got to train there. That was fun.
So good.
Yep.
Whoa.
Crazy.
And
yep, that's at the All Japan Open. That was cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool place, that Budokan thing. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. And that's all a Japan Budokan, which is the martial arts display center, and we were at the all world demonstrations for Aikido. It's like 8 hours of Aikido. That was fun, and we got to do a demonstration there. We were the American representatives that year.
Yeah, it was cool. And then bottom left, that's Iwama.
Sorry, I gotta go, but presentation mode. Just got out of presentation. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that was that's in the actually in the Aikikai shrine, Aiki shrine, and that's a new version of O-sensei that was there when I went there in the 90s. That's where we practiced with Saito Sensei in weapons in the morning.
Wow.
Every morning when you woke up, we would go rake it, and then we would practice it, and then we would rake it again when we're done. And now there's no more practice there, but I think they practice there once a year for a special event in Tokyo. So from the Aikikai. There you go.
Yeah, that was just going to the Iwama station. It's just kind of cool because there's a lot of people that do Aikido, but they never go to Iwama, right? It's kind of interesting.
part of the founder's path there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you would think. And I don't remember where this was taken. I just thought it was a cool looking tree. It reminded me of a Charlie Brown Christmas tree.
There you go.
does.
I think this was the Shogun's park that we took
Oh yeah.
the Asakusa, and then we took the ferry down to this one, and then we got off here.
Okay.
And we had the tea at the tea house in the
Yeah,
middle.
that's great.
And what's this one, Lisan? This guy right here.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I just think it's interesting that they, it's so busy around there. They have to have, they had marked out their little police cars and stuff like that, which I've heard they don't use a lot of the car. So it's just for different transports and stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting to see. And then over, like, if you look at the photograph, I think to the left, up top in the corner there, it's showing a police officer talking to a child. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But that's the location you can go talk to a police officer, or if you need help, obviously. So.
Yeah, and there's for everybody listening, there's most locations have a koban, which is I believe it's called is that there's a little small station with 2 or 3 people, and they have them all kind of around, and I think it's a red lantern or a red thing. It used to be, but all the locations have a little police area. They're kind of the community police, and they talk to people, and they know the people in the area. So that was a fun one. That was a good one. Karasan of, I think Lesan at the same place.
Yes.
Oh yeah, there it is.
That's Lesan, and I love that. I love that shot because it's for lots of reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I wasn't as good in finding as many photos, but I chose a few that I could find. And the first a trip that we took for Aikido with Izawa Sensei and Cha Sensei, and we went to Hokkaido, and we took kind of the path of O Sensei and visited up here with it was an awesome trip, and it was called Ohotsuku, Japan. Ohotsuku, Japan. That was a lot of fun. And well, sorry, I'm right on that same one. There's on the way back down, there's this huge hills full of these pink flowers, and I thought, and also tulip farms and stuff, which I thought was very interesting. And then, of course, we hit Tokyo, which I thought was a fun trip, especially with people, and we go explore the side streets and find restaurants and stuff. And I think that's a go-to place. I got that same picture of us in Iwama. This one's all of us here, and I think that was a special for me that I got to train in Iwama when I was young in Aikido for a few weeks and train by myself and all that stuff. And then over the years, I've been back a few times, but it was nice to go back with all of you from Kiryu Aikido and my friends and students, and I thought that was a really cool experience. And we had other people that had the opportunity to go, and people didn't choose to go with us, and we got to go with some really nice senseis as well, so that was kind of fun. This is one of my favorite pictures of us when we did the All Japan demo, and that was kind of just a fun experience. And just you get out, was it probably a minute and a half or something? I don't know. It's just like it's fast and furious. So I thought that was awesome. This was a fun. One of you guys put this, so I kind of put it together, but kind of the fun group of all of us. And then I'll do this one last here. And then Takayama. Here's Takayama. We talked about. We went and visited, and there's a stream that flows through the middle, and you wouldn't believe it. You think it's just like normal fish in there, but there's these beautiful. In Japan, like koi is like a thing, and they're really high end fish, I think, and they have these beautiful giant koi in the middle of this river, right? Like it's like wow. So that's a really cool thing, and I think those flags are from Boys Day or something.
I think so.
And then Hida Village, which is, like you said, this old village that kind of shares the culture and history of Japan. And they even have people, or they used to have people that work there, and some lady that was maybe in her 90s, and she's sewing like actual
Yeah.
stuff from things, like it's true history. And I think it's cool because they Japan a lot of times includes the people in that history, and I would assume they employ those people a little bit in the sense of let them share. And then that we saw this samurai on the way down the path, and I thought that was pretty impressive.
He was quite fierce, quite
fierce.
yes.
And then
After that hike.
I don't know if this is exactly shabu shabu, but this reminds us of shabu shabu. It might be shabu shabu at the end. And this was a good story with John San, Les San, and Kara San, and myself. And there was this really nice Japanese lady. She was serving us, and normally the Japanese ladies, the servers go and they do the shabu shabu. Which shabu is the noise that the beef is swishing swish in the hot water, and it cooks it because it's really thin. And she showed, and then Lesan took over that, and she was a little bit frustrated, and she's like, I'm not sure. And Lesan's like, no, I got this. And she's like a little bit frustrated, but then she kind of got into it, and she realized that he was maybe a semi-professional shabu shabuer. And so he's our official dojo shabu shabuer. And this is the you can tell whose fingers are right in this one. You can see right here. It's the same. Cool. And then we'll bring this up for the last story. But does anyone want to tell that fun story of us in and you can see it right here. It even says it right here. See it right there. 300 meters.
300 meters. Yes.
Anybody want to tell that story?
Kara-san should tell the story because she's the storyteller.
Okay.
She's the writer.
Okay. So this is outside of Takayama, and we want to go see Hida Village, our group. So we set out, and it's a walk, and on the map it's a mile. Let's say it's a mile. So we walk. And
that's what we were told by somebody.
Okay, we're told it's a mile. And the map again is shape shifted, so it's not really the map. And so we walk, and we're walking way more than we think we should. So Andrew Sensei, we stop at a little place, and he's like, how far to Hida Village? Oh, 300 meters. 300 meters. Okay. All right. So we keep walking another 300 meters.
Tanbyaku meter. They said Tanbyaku meter. Like, okay, got it.
Meters. Nice. This way. Keep going. So this happened, I won't say how many times. Many.
This is our ascension, times. By the way. We're going up a hill at this point.
Yeah, like that.
It's all uphill. And so yes, again, 300 meters. And this happened probably 5 or 6 times. So we've probably hiked, I don't know, 5 miles, it felt like, up all uphill.
And even the one that was close, they said 300 meters. I'm
300 meters.
So I think it's a joke. I think it's a joke, but
I don't know.
So we got there.
Maybe they do that with everyone. So we get there. It's an amazing place. Amazing. We poke around, look at all the buildings and stuff. And as we go in, we see that there's a shuttle bus that takes people back to town, 300 meters back to town. And it leaves at, no, it didn't say when it left. So the park closes at, let's say 5 o'clock. So we're like, okay, the shuttle leaves at 5. So we'll be back at that entrance, the out gate at 5 o'clock. So we're looking around. We get out to the out gate. Everything is closing down. They're closing down the doors. Everything is closing. Like, where's the shuttle? Oh, that comes at 4:45.
Like, wait
a minute. Only in Japan. You gotta love
that. Goes to the planning thing that Les was talking about.
Yes, indeed. So, and I do have a picture of this Andrew Sensei somewhere. So we're like, well, at least it's downhill. Down to the village.
That's right, 300 meters down the hill. Exactly.
So, okay, we'll start walking down the hill, and we did. Like, all right, no big deal. And we're walking down the hill, and this little Japanese car comes up and makes like a U-turn or something. And in Japan, the ditches are kind of these concrete things, and he mistakenly drives his car into the ditch, and it goes. I'll never forget the sound, like clunk. Like, well, that's not a good sound. And Andrew Sensei said, "Quote, there's our ride." so we all walked over to this adorable Japanese man who's like, "Oh, I put my car in the ditch," and he's like, "Could we help you, sir?" So these three strong gentlemen helped literally probably lift his car out of the ditch. He's like, "Oh, please let me take you to town. Wherever you need to go, get in the car." So we pile in the car, which is tiny. It's like a
Yes.
clown car.
Mm.
And I have a picture like, here's Andrew Sensei and the Japanese man. The rest of us are in the back, and he takes us all the way to town. And
It
then
was a
we
clown car, right? Our
in a
feet were
clown
sticking
car.
out.
That's right.
It was. It was a beautiful, just this beautiful, I'll use the word kismet. Like, how beautiful. If we hadn't missed the shuttle and climbed 300 meters and seen this beautiful place, we would never have met this man and had this experience. So,
But you know, the best part of that story, though, right? Is when we get to the bottom and he drops us off and he says, no, I take you over here. We go, oh no, we're fine here.
Yeah.
And then he leaves, and then later we see him because he owned a bicycle shop.
That's right.
And so we stopped by, we're like, hi.
He's
Yeah,
like,
we walked all the way to him and he goes,
so
It was
Him and his
funny.
daughter or something like that.
Yeah. That was so fun.
Get rid of the guy then.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
And then we
look
had
at that.
Kita beef, which is a special
Yeah.
Yes.
special beef, kind of cooked grilled beef meal. So
That was awesome too.
It was. It was.
so many awesome memories there. So we talked a little bit about preconceptions and what you think about there, and part of the preconceptions are kind of mentally preparing yourself for going with the flow, I guess. And that's part of Aikido. Like, just go with the flow. Sometimes you might not see what you might not find the place you might miss the train, you might not have your money, you might not have your stuff, but it's all going to work out in Japan, so and then Lesan mentioned we all kind of gave a few tips, like now that you have your preconceptions out of the way, all about that is try to get ready for Japan and learn a little bit of Japanese as much as you can, but nobody's going to speak Japanese forever. Even if you study Japanese, the first few times you're going to be still learning it. It takes a long time. And then you prepare for Japan. We talked about the great tips and so many different things. So go back to that section for that. And then we talked about all the great, amazing experiences we've had in Japan. And I think between just us three, and that's probably even a short amount of it, these are amazing experiences that really you can't explain. It's hard for us to even explain and enjoy what those. So you kind of have to make your own adventures. You got to live your own adventures. And so, and then we talked about a few of our favorite moments, and the photos are just a snapshot in time. So yeah, that's kind of my kind of thought of this whole discussion today. But kind of end with each of you maybe a last kind of thought on traveling to Japan. How about Carson? Why don't you go?
Just go. Just go. It's a really no words to describe it. There's so many different things. There's snow in the winter in Hokkaido that's 15 feet deep, and there's beautiful sakura in the spring, and there's nature and cities and wonderful people. So just go, really just go, experience it, and be ready to just go with the flow.
That's what's your kind of thought on, going to Japan and, some just kind of, how do you put all this together?
Well, kind of what Carson says, you just need to go, right? Because a lot of people think, you have to study years of Japanese and you have to do all this other type of stuff, but they're there to help you, right? They want you to be there. So it seems, right? And there's a lot to see. And if you do your planning right, you'll be able to see a lot of it, but you could probably go there 10, 12 times and you wouldn't be able to hit everything that you want to hit. So you should at least do it once. And like I said, I had a kind of a crutch the first time because Andrew Sensei and Kara Sensei, all right? And then the second time I went, it was kind of like, I didn't think I was a professional at any point, but it's a little bit different. And if you, again, just go with the flow, unexpected things are going to happen. And then, but you can do it. It's so fun to be there and stuff like that. The food's awesome, the atmosphere, and like I said, there's no way I think if you went 10, 15 times that you could get it all in. And that's just like in the small Tokyo area, right? I mean, there's so much more to see. But don't be afraid to go because you don't know the language. So
Yes.
there's a lot of fun stuff to do. So.
Yeah. So and to kind of recap, we're doing this on the Heart of the Dojo podcast with Kiryu Aikido and our virtual dojo. And the reason why we do this is we're explaining that there's so much culture behind our original martial art, and martial art came out of Japan, and really, just like anything, understanding a little bit of language and a little bit of culture, and also experiences of training, and that would be a separate one that I'm going to pull together on some of my training experiences in Japan. But you know, all this together and training is really really can help add some depth and a thought to where Aikido came from, the culture behind it, and a lot to learn. So I wanted to thank both Kara and Les Senseis for joining me today, and all of you to join us. And we'll give everybody a wave and sayonara for now. Thank you, everyone.
Sayonara.
Sayonara.